Alright, so now you know how your Raptor works, how your Pounce works, and have a small idea of how the PvP works. If not, then you have not seen the previous videos, or maybe you still don't understand, in which case I apologize. For those who haven't seen the other videos yet, check the playlist and make sure to give them a check. Now if you do know, this is good as a start. Very good in fact, but how do we min-max our Raptor using the mutation system? Now the first thing you should know is that you can only have 3 mutations as of this moment when you spawn in fresh. You can have up to 6 mutations if you are nested in. I will cover the best builds for both scenarios, both meta and non-meta builds, and common made mistakes when people are picking them. I will first cover the common mistakes that I see made, which should be a short and direct section and easy to follow, so let's just get into that. Mutations I often see picked up are hemomania, accelerated prey drive, and hypermetabolic inanition. These 3 mutations are good mutations, but when used on the Raptor, their value is just not good enough. The Raptor has a bite force of 65, so dealing 5% more damage on the bleeding target means your bite force becomes around 68.2. Accelerated prey drive has a value of 10%, meaning bite force would become 71.5 when the target is below half only. And hypermetabolic inanition is dependent on how full your stomach is, and you would have to get down to 15% food for it to reach its max value of 50% bonus damage, which would make your bite force around 74.8 or rounded up, let's say 75. Now the issue is that this is not nearly enough to make you deal more damage. Additionally, damage mutations have zero effect on abilities, it only affects your bites. So the Pounce does not benefit from this sadly, making them pretty useless overall. So if you have been using these mutations, I highly recommend you stop using them when meta builds are available. With non-meta builds and servers with the meta mutations disabled, they become kind of optional picks, but as long as the meta mutations are not disabled on the server you play on, choosing them is an absolute waste. Instead of focusing on damage, as a Raptor you completely want to focus on survivability. So let's get into the builds that achieve this. Also, I will be referring to Gen 1 builds and Gen 2 builds. Gen 1 simply means that you have been freshly spawned in, and Gen 2 means that you have been nested in, giving you a 6 mutation potential. And I say potential because you are already able to nest at 80% growth, and if you get born from a nest with parents that are not 100% grown, you will only have 5 mutations instead of 6. Alright, let's get into it. The meta build, Generation 1. For the Gen 1 meta build, you want to be running the following: photosynthetic tissue, gastronomic regeneration, and congenital hypogasia. Photo gives you a 5% speed increase and some extra healing, which effectively makes your Raptor 49.1 kilometers an hour. Gastro will allow your Raptor to heal from simply eating, and Raptors tend to get critically injured in fights, so it's a must-have mutation, and potentially the best slot overall out of all the mutations available. Congenital will allow you to take 15% reduced damage from species that are heavier than you are. As a 450 kilogram creature, everything that is dangerous is heavier than you. And if it's not heavier than you, you have an insane upper hand with your pounce mechanic that pins down any creature below your own weight. Now the Gen 2 build, and as a rule of thumb, always check your Gen 2 mutations where you get born. If you have Photo, Gastro, and Congen, congrats, you are on your way to greatness. If not, then you will have to pick them up when you can. Keep in mind, Gastronomic is a slot 2 mutation and cannot fit in slot 1 or slot 3. But let's say you have those 3 mutations since birth and your parents knew what they were doing. The following 3 mutations you want to be picking up are the following: nocturnal, reinforced tendons, and epidermal fibrosis. Nocturnal will allow you to be fast during the night. In combination with Photo, you will be fast no matter the time of day. Reinforced tendons cuts down your jump cost by 50%. If you play on a server where this is nerfed, select hypermetabolic inanition instead. An epidemic of fibrosis increases your bleed resist by 15%, making sure you don't bleed out as easily when you get hit by an attack that does a lot of bleed damage. So these 6 mutations are the best ones you can have on a server with meta mutations enabled. Now let's say the meta mutations are disabled, then what should you choose? It all depends on what got disabled, but in general, there is 2 mutations you always want to try and pick up if the speed mutations and the gastro mutation and tactile are disabled. So this is the build for a Gen 1 on a non-meta server. The first one you want to have is congenital hypogasia. The second mutation you want to pick up in this case is hypermetabolic inanition, and the third one is epidermal fibrosis. So basically the damage reduction of 15%, you get 15% damage increase if you're hungry, and your bleed resist is better. And the healing mutations, unless specifically buffed on the server you play on, like Northern has cellular buff to 50%, but in general they are not good enough on their own to be worth a pick. As for a Generation 2 build, I would say congenital hypogasia, hypermetabolic inanition, epidermal fibrosis, then hemomania, reinforced tendons, and then accelerated prey drive. When the meta mutations are no longer present, the damage mutations become your next best bet. And if you somehow are playing with those mutations also disabled, then you can honestly pick whatever you want, as it doesn't really matter anymore. As long as you can pick congenital and epidermal fibrosis for survivability, anything else is kind of acceptable. Now a note about reinforced tendons, this is a hidden mutation. And the way to unlock this mutation is simple. Your raptor needs to have jumped 50 times since you spawned in or get born from an egg. Once you have jumped 50 times, the mutation will become available in the list. And it's only available in slot 2, to my knowledge. Now jumping around and being out of stamina can be quite dangerous if poorly timed in the wrong place. So in the next video, let's see what areas are best suited to grow a raptor in and give you the highest chances for survival. See you there.